Peter Wilkinson has been the Queen's personal cameraman for nearly 20 years.
I think one of the reasons why it works to have one person as the Queen's cameraman is that she feels comfortable with him.
He has recorded Her Majesty's every public appearance, through good times and bad.
Within hours of the crash, I filmed her, and yeah, she was visibly upset by it all.
But Peter Wilkinson's calm exterior belies a turbulent past.
I don't think he ever deliberately put himself in danger, but he always put himself in a position where he could get the best picture.
He's a man who has filmed in some of the world's most dangerous hotspots.
Peter is unique. He's the only cameraman I know that's done everything. He's done war zones, he's done environment stories, he's been to dangerous places, and he's done all of it brilliantly well.
In this programme, featuring extraordinary access across a year, we'll see the Queen through the eyes of a man who has spent 50 years behind the lens.
I never get bored, no. I'm filming the Queen meeting different people every day.
We'll go behind the scenes at Buckingham Palace and witness some of the highlights of a year in which the Queen became Britain's longest-serving monarch.
The Queen knows me now. I'm sure she trusts me. We get on very well. I love my job. It's great.
Peter Wilkinson has worked as cameraman to the Queen for 18 years. He is employed by ITN, the BBC and Sky, but his office is here at Buckingham Palace, and his job? To film all the Queen's public engagements for news bulletins around the world. It's May 2015, and the day of one of the most popular events in the royal calendar. Today, the Queen will host a garden party in the grounds of Buckingham Palace, and Peter has arrived to prepare for the big occasion.
My job on a day of a garden party is to show the Queen meeting all walks of life. At Buckingham Palace, there are 4 a year. So I suppose over the years, I filmed about 70 garden parties. Everyone's happy to be there. We seem to be very lucky in the weather. I can only recall 2 where it's rained. It's a great day, and to meet the Queen is a real bonus.
It's very special to be allowed through those gates. And suddenly, you're crunching over the gravel. And not only that, you're being allowed into the garden. And there are wonderful marquees set up all along one side with the most delightful sandwiches. Dainty cakes, beautiful bone chine, a lovely, delicious tea.
Yes, can I have a tea, please?
Around 8,000 guests will be at today's royal garden party, consuming nearly 60,000 cups of tea, sandwiches and cakes between them.
The purpose of a garden party is essentially its recognition and reward for people from around the United Kingdom who've done good things, who may have served for a number of years, and they then receive an invitation to the Queen's back garden. And there they are in the grounds of Buckingham Palace, hoping for perhaps an opportunity to meet the Queen and to be photographed by Peter.
You're going to have to come back, everybody.
Well, we're just waiting for Her Majesty to come out, which is about 15 minutes away. We'll see all the people forming up in the lanes any moment now.
Yeah, so at 4 o'clock what will happen is the Queen and the members of the royal family will proceed down the steps and they will come down.
Well, Peter's a joy to work with. He's ultra-professional, incredibly discreet. Her Majesty always knows that Peter will be the one cameraman who can come in close to her in a non-intrusive way.
At 4 o'clock sharp, the Queen arrives to greet her guests. A chosen few will be selected to chat to her as she walks down the lanes.
I tell you what the serious purpose of a royal garden party is, that it means a huge amount to the people who were invited. And people absolutely love it, and it means a lot to them. You know, it's a touch of stardust. When you're standing watching, you know, Peter's there filming it all, that's what you see. You see the pleasure on people's faces.
Whatever's going on, I film it. If I need to be 12 feet away, 20 feet away, I will be. But if I can, I'll go in as close as 6 feet to the Queen. Could have been a good wildlife cameraman, because I've got patience. I would stand watching something for hours.
But what's it like actually meeting the Queen? The royal cameraman sometimes offers a few words of advice.
They're dressed up and smiling, and they stand there in the line. And they say, I'm told I shouldn't speak to the Queen unless she speaks to me. I said, no, just relax. You know, the Queen likes you to talk to her as well, you know. She doesn't want to be asking you questions all the time.
Sorry, great friend. I wasn't too sure what I was to wear, but I thought, well,
Whenever I'm filming the Queen, part of my role is to film a little bit of the Duke, and quite often I forget. And then I hear a roar of laughter. So I think, oh yeah, the Duke. He's got people in hysterics, and he's just such a funny guy. He makes everyone laugh. Amazingly, he makes the Queen laugh, I think, most days, which I wish I could do with my wife.
But Peter Wilkinson's job, in a career spanning 6 decades, has not always been full of such light-hearted moments.
I was always keen in photography, got on well with people. I felt that I could be a good cameraman.
In 1965, the then 19-year-old joined ITN as a trainee film editor. 5 years later, he was a young cameraman on the front line in Belfast.
I remember going into the Falls Road and filming, and it was just horrendous. I mean, most I'd ever seen was a fight in the playground at school. To be there with this amount of violence going on, it was horrendous. And I thought, what am I doing here? But it was television, and it was happening, had to be shown, really. Virtually every day, there were riots, and then after the riots, there were deaths.
By the early 1970s, Peter Wilkinson's pictures of the Troubles would be beamed into our homes every week.
Those were the days when film ruled in television, and Peter was terribly good at getting the pictures that mattered and would be remembered.
On one unforgettable day in January 1972, Peter Wilkinson was on duty in Londonderry on a day that would become known as Bloody Sunday.
It started in the Craigan, massive march. The army had put up barricades, and there was just a sort of a general, everyday riot, which lasted probably 2 or 3 hours. And then there was this command by someone to send in the paras.
Then, as we followed them, the shots that Peter was getting were paratroopers in the aim position and some firing.
It was just amazing amount of gunfire that happened. I think there were 12 or 13 people lying on this open ground with gunshot wounds. I did start to film them picking up the bodies and putting them in the back of these armoured personnel carriers, but I was asked not to because it wasn't in very good taste, and I stopped filming, which I shouldn't have done, but I was quite a young cameraman.
13 innocent people died that day, and Peter Wilkinson's pictures and testimony became part of 2 Bloody Sunday inquiries.
I think the fact that Peter has been a war cameraman and has done the remarkable things that he has done, I think that is what gives him the confidence, if you like, to deal with the situation that he now finds himself in as the Queen's cameraman.
I remember the veterans' reception at Buckingham Palace, and she came up to this chap who was blind. And I remember her touching him on the shoulder and saying, "It's okay, it's only the Queen." And because he shuffled like this to stand up. It was just so nice, the way she touched him on the shoulder. She said, "It's okay, it's only the Queen."
Today, the Queen is curious to know how her cameraman feels to be in the spotlight.
She said, "Have they finished filming that film about you yet?" I said, "I know what it feels like now, ma'am."
With the garden party over, Peter goes back to his office to send his pictures to Britain's leading broadcasters.
Hello, it's Peter Wilkinson at Buckingham Palace.
They will always use the Queen, and my pictures will, once I've fed them, they can go around the world within hours.
But there's always another royal occasion just around the corner, and Peter prepares to follow the Queen on her next engagement as the crowds line up for a day they'll never forget. It's July 2015, and a very special day for the people of Dagenham, Essex. The Queen is coming to visit their borough to mark the occasion of its 50th anniversary.
An awful lot of what the Queen does is not reported nationally. She does more than 300 events every year. It might be a community centre, it might be a hospital, it might be a school.
Oh yeah, big day, yeah, because we don't normally get her down here, like very, very rare, and to see someone special like the Queen.
And for me, as the World Chancellor, I'm so excited that she's coming to my patch. Why not? She's also going to mine. Peter, myself, and then
Cameraman to the Queen, Peter Wilkinson, has arrived early to prepare for the day ahead. No detail will be left to chance.
I work for the broadcasters, but I also work alongside the press office at Buckingham Palace. Unless I work alongside the press office, I wouldn't get the sort of material that I get, you know. That's why it works so well.
I do paint, and I do like to paint.
Oh, I see.
And I'm looking for a good one.
Just seeing what would make good television, really. And if the Queen's going to look at people on computers, want to see a decent picture on there. But this is good today. It's a great turnout. And the weather's good.
Today, the Queen has 4 engagements, starting with the opening of a community centre. Hundreds of people have lined up to welcome her.
Peter always knows how close he can get to the Queen. The secret that Peter has perfected, I think, is being there and being close enough to get the shots, almost without the Queen knowing. She just accepts him as part of the entourage, and he is now one of those familiar faces.
Peter is a one-off, really, and he's done this job for almost 20 years, and he's, if I have to say so, he doesn't look a day older. He looks amazing. He always looks so smart, always very polite, and the only time you have to beware is if you're getting his way.
It may seem terribly easy just to every day go out with your camera and take a few sequences of the Queen doing this, that, and the other, but it requires any amount of skill, because once the moment's gone, it's gone. And if you miss it, she's not going to do it again.
The Queen's cameraman has long since understood the importance of capturing a moment. As a former news cameraman, he was in Saigon with reporter Michael Nicholson as the Vietnam War drew to a dramatic close.
Peter was in Vietnam in those chaotic last few weeks. There must have been about 300 journalists in Saigon. The war was right around us now, and we were all waiting to get out.
Vietnam was horrendous. There was still a lot of fighting going on.
In April 1975, plans were in place for the emergency evacuation of Saigon.
We were briefed by a CIA officer that we mustn't panic. I mean, he's telling us we mustn't panic.
At that time, we would make our way to a place and we would be picked up and taken to the airport.
And we had to wait for a signal on American Forces Network. And that signal would be Bing Crosby singing White Christmas.
Like the ones
So we listened for White Christmas. It never came, so there was pandemonium. We realized the communist tanks were just across the Saigon River.
Ton Son Nhut Airport became unsafe. They started shelling the airport. So the only other place to go was the American embassy. Thousands of people around the embassy.
We fought and we clawed our way through this mass of Vietnamese. There was a Marine on the top of the wall, and when he saw our Western faces, he was grabbing us and pulling us up.
I was the first one over, but I stood on the wall, and the GIs behind me were saying, "Put the camera down, otherwise we're going to shoot you." And I thought, well, I'm going to take a chance.
Even in the panic to escape, Peter Wilkinson carried on filming. Pictures that would record the end of a dark chapter in modern history.
And Peter filmed Hugh Thompson, the sound recordist, and me getting over the wall. And then he filmed me running to the helicopter. I was a bit hesitant, didn't quite know what to do.
We were the only three-man crew that made it out together, and nobody shot any film. They'd all either run out of film or had, dropped the camera, or the lens had been smashed off. It wasn't a good day. We all felt ashamed that we'd fought our way through these people to get out ourselves.
Back in Dagenham, Peter Wilkinson has followed the Queen to her second engagement of the day, the opening of a new school extension.
He's a very dignified guy. He knows when not to speak. He knows when not to put his foot through the door. He seems to know exactly what a courtier should know. I suppose he's the world's only courtier cameraman.
The Queen knows what we're all trying to get, photographers and cameraman. If she sees a cameraman behind a group of people, she will try and be there, basically, so that they get nice pictures. The Queen works every day. Christmas Day is the only day that she doesn't open the red boxes. When she's on holiday, wherever she is, she's working.
To keep up with the Queen's tight schedule, Peter gets a lift with the royal entourage.
I'm lucky enough for her to allow me to go into the suite car, which is behind her car, and then we go on to the next engagement. I jump out first and film her meeting the dignitaries on the doorstep.
Peter is en route to the Queen's third engagement of the day at a local theatre.
I would like to ask Her Majesty and the Royal Highness to unveil the plaque.
Most of them run smoothly. That one, the Queen tried to pull the cloth off and it just snagged on the easel and the whole thing almost went over. But the Queen is an expert on unveiling.
Today, Peter Wilkinson's travelling companion may be the nation's monarch, but over 30 years ago, he was filming in some of the world's most dangerous trouble spots, alongside distinguished reporters like Trevor McDonald.
I remember being in Manila in the Philippines with Peter, and it was the night that Marcos fell. Here was this man who was an absolute brutal dictator. And what did we do? And it was Peter's idea, I'm pretty sure, to go down to the presidential palace.
The locals had broken the gates down of the palace, and the soldiers basically just stood back and let them get on with it. And they were looting the palace.
Occasionally there's been bursts of gunfire by members of the Presidential Guard who are still loyal to President Marcos and who are still in the palace grounds.
I'd heard gunfire before, and I wasn't too worried about that. But then I became aware that large bits of tarmac were being dug up all around me. And I said to Peter, "Do you think that means that they are real bullets?" And he said, "What the hell do you think they mean? Get out of the way." We ran for cover. He, by the way, found a place to keep taking the pictures.
As Peter risked his life in war zones, back home in England, his wife and children were waiting for news.
I don't think I ever wrote a letter when I was in Vietnam, but when I was in all the other wars, I would always leave a letter in the hotel for Linda and the girls to say, if anything happens to me, I hope you never get to read this. But that was very moving, knowing you were going up the road the next morning to a pretty heavy conflict.
It was terrible, the things that he witnessed. He didn't always talk about it when he came back, but that was the job that he chose to do. If I were to fret and worry every time he went away, my life wouldn't have been worth living, really.
Peter's hard news days are over, but his former job is well known to the Queen.
I was invited to a lunch at the palace, and the master of the household asked me for a resume of my career before, and it was passed on to the Duke and the Queen. And when I met them, the Duke said, "It must be very boring working here after all the conflicts you've covered through, in the world." And I said, "No, not at all, sir. We do something different every day. We go to different events." He laughed.
The royal visit to Essex is over, and for the crowds in Dagenham, a day they will never forget. But Peter is already working towards his next assignment, a truly historic occasion, as he follows the Queen to Scotland on the day she becomes Britain's longest-serving monarch. Peter Wilkinson, cameraman to the Queen, is on his way to Scotland for an engagement with Her Majesty, and a day that will go down in royal history.
The Queen has a real love for Scotland. She loves the country. She's very fond of the people. That's where she chooses to go for a holiday. That's how much she loves it.
Every year, Peter films the Queen arriving in Scotland, and this year will be especially poignant.
On the 9th of September, the Queen becomes the longest reigning monarch, which is pretty amazing.
Peter's unique role began in 1998, coming at a time when the relationship between the palace and the press was at an all-time low after the death of Diana, Princess of Wales. Royal photo calls had turned into a battle between competing camera crews.
There was this huge posse of cameramen everywhere, cameras in her face. We'd be tripping over each other trying to get close to her. And that doesn't make for a very happy monarch, actually.
The broadcasters came up with a novel solution: appoint one royal cameraman for all of the Queen's engagements.
The other advantage of the role was that the material would be shared between all broadcasters, so it was a very fair system.
Why Peter for that job? Well, partly because he was one of the best cameramen in the country. His calmness, obviously his maturity, 30 years of work. He had nothing to prove to anyone.
From the earliest days, Peter witnessed a different side to a very public figure during some of her most testing moments. It was his pictures of the Queen that went around the world in the aftermath of the Ladbroke Grove rail crash.
Within hours of the crash, I filmed her, and yeah, she was visibly upset by it all. And I think we went to the hospitals afterwards to visit some of the injured.
The Queen's Golden Jubilee proved to be a year of both joy and sadness.
One of the saddest occasions was obviously the loss of her mother. In the same year, the loss of her sister, Princess Margaret. When she met people laying flowers for her mother, she said, yes, it is very sad, but she said, my mama had a wonderful, long, happy life, and I gave them a smile, and yeah.
Peter was also alongside the Queen when she shared the nation's grief after the London 7/7 bombings.
I stood on the doorstep of the palace with a police officer, and we could hear the thuds. Working in Belfast all the years, I mean, I knew a bomb. Such a unique sound. And the next morning, I went off with the Queen and we met some of the survivors, and that was, yeah, pretty moving stuff. There's no point in the Queen getting distressed with people because that wouldn't help anyone. But she has great compassion for people.
Over the years, Peter Wilkinson has built up a relationship of trust with the palace.
One paw. That's it.
The Queen is rarely filmed with her beloved dogs, but when the corgis were filmed, it was Peter who was brought in especially to do it.
She knows Peter, she knows his face. He's very quiet, he's unassuming, he's smart, he's discreet. I think since Peter's been on the scene, I think you could honestly say that we've seen a more relaxed Queen.
The Queen's Diamond Jubilee marked her 60 years on the throne. Now she reaches another historic milestone. It's the 9th of September. Today, Queen Elizabeth will overtake her great-great-grandmother, Queen Victoria, as Britain's longest-serving monarch. Not surprisingly, on such a historic day, the world's media have descended upon Edinburgh to record the occasion.
Majesty's due here shortly, but palace officials are keen to keep a lid on celebrations out of respect for Queen Victoria and mindful of Prince Charles.
The Queen will open a new railway line from Edinburgh to the borders. Most of the media will be behind barriers. Only Peter and a small number of press photographers are allowed close to Her Majesty. She will travel on this steam train for the 30-mile journey to Tweedbank Station, and Peter will be on board to film her.
That's the single compartment, but I would guess she'd be here because, I mean, we're not going to be able to work in there, are we?
Yeah.
It's very tight. So it's
very tight. Would you be able to tell us where they were likely to sit?
I would imagine Her Majesty will sit there facing direction of travel.
Yeah, and the Duke will sit opposite
The Duke
her?
will either sit there or there.
Well, it's fabulous. It's a very small compartment, though, isn't it? Really small. So I don't know how long we'll have filming the Queen. We're almost, 3 feet away from her face.
As the crowds build up at Waverley Station, in just a few minutes' time, the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh will be sitting in this carriage. Peter Wilkinson's life is planned around the royal diary. But years ago, when he worked as a news cameraman, he could be sent anywhere in the world at a moment's notice, not knowing when he might return home.
He would go to work to go away. He'd go in on a Monday and possibly be gone for many weeks.
In 1983, Peter was sent to Africa to cover the Ethiopian famine with reporter David Smith. Unbeknown to them, they would not be coming home for some time.
We've found some of the worst cases of malnutrition, exhaustion and disease I've seen in several years of reporting.
Filming children, starving is horrendous. As a cameraman, you'd film their little tiny fingers and their rib cage, and you have to do all these shots, and afterwards, I don't know, it's really upsetting. You can't get emotionally involved. I'm looking through a black and white viewfinder, fortunately.
Tears don't come easily to a man who's seen as much as Peter Wilkinson, but Peter shed a tear or two in Ethiopia, looking at mothers and children in camps.
The news crew had gone to film a famine and ended up tracking down aid workers who were being held hostage by rebel soldiers.
We went in to establish whether they were alive and okay.
Claire, hi.
Thank you for your letter.
That's all right.
What we didn't realise was that we, of course, then became hostages ourselves.
Our hosts decided that we wouldn't be going anywhere, and we were also held for a long time.
I think I had one letter from him during that time, but he was away for 9 weeks. We moved to different huts every 2 days, but this one, the worst we've been in for 6 days.
Peter would remind us every day of what really mattered, which was the famine. That was why we'd gone there in the first place. But at the same time, Peter would be reminding all of us, it's okay, we're going to get out of here. And fortunately, he was right.
After a 9-week ordeal, Peter and his team were finally released and came home. In Edinburgh, the Queen arrives at Waverley Station to be welcomed by Scotland's First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, before embarking on a historic railway journey to mark a historic occasion.
I don't think people really understand how tricky organising a royal story can be. You've got to plan it, you've got to have cameras at all the points. And it used to be like planning a battle, really. Now, once Peter came on the scene, we knew that someone was going to be close up to the Queen at all the important moments.
Peter gets his shots. Then, minutes before the train arrives at Tweedbank Station, he has time to grab another unique picture of the Queen waving to the cheering crowds. It's images like these that can make the headlines. In 1983, Peter Wilkinson was filming prospective Labour leader Neil Kinnock on Brighton Beach, when he now famously took a tumble. The pictures became instant headline news.
There's going to be an appeal to your better nature now, lad. And I said, Neil, you could appeal to mine, but look at these guys running towards the hotel, obviously to send off their pictures. And Neil laughed about it, but I don't think it did him any favours.
In Scotland, the Queen's historic day is going to plan without such a public slip-up. Peter Wilkinson's ultimate nightmare.
The biggest worry on the day would be the Queen tripping up or the Duke of Edinburgh tripping up. I just hope it won't happen on my watch.
Meet these guys here.
TV cameras live, so they're not going to move.
Well, out the way, one way or the other. Let's move it. Quite often I'm walking backwards in front of her, filming her. And she put a little spurt on it, as much as I can do to sort of keep my couple of metres distance between her. She's just amazing, her stamina. I get home at the end of the day, I'm absolutely exhausted trying to keep up with her.
Your Majesty, today you become the longest reigning monarch in British history.
After a long wait, this is the moment the crowds have come for, to hear Her Majesty speak on a day that will go down in history.
Prince Philip and I are very grateful for the warmth of your welcome on this occasion. Inevitably, a long life can pass by many milestones. My own is no exception. But I thank you all, and the many others at home and overseas, for your touching messages of great kindness.
Peter Wilkinson has always recognised the importance of protocol wherever he was around the world. In 1992, he was with reporter Lawrence McGuinty filming an indigenous tribe in the Amazon jungle.
One of the difficulties that Peter faced filming a tribe in the Amazon was that we didn't know any of the social rules. And we didn't know, did you shake hands? Did you hug people? How far away can you stand before they see it as intrusive? Peter picked it up quicker than anybody.
As far as sort of getting on with people, only the chief spoke Portuguese, so we could talk through him. But children are always amazing to get on with, aren't they?
I suppose if you're filming a tribe in a Brazilian rainforest, there are some lessons that you can learn for a later job if you're filming the royal family. There are still rules, often unspoken, about how you should behave and how intrusive a camera can be.
After 18 years working on the royal trail, Peter has become a familiar part of the Queen's entourage.
Quite often she will have a chat about everyday things. I spoke to the Queen once up in Balmoral and I said, "Your kitchen garden looks spectacular." She said, "I can't understand." She said, "I planted some sweet peas and my gardener planted some sweet peas and his are taller than mine and I can't understand why." And I said, "That can't be right, ma'am, can it?" And she just laughed at me.
I think she quite likes Peter. And Peter's very relaxed and normal with her.
She looked very happy. Yeah, it was a great day. Fabulous. Long may she reign.
The big day is over. Well, for today. Because just like Her Majesty, Peter Wilkinson's work is never done. And an important state visit lies ahead. October 2015. Twice a year, the Queen welcomes a foreign head of state to stay in Buckingham Palace, with all the pomp and ceremony that entails. Today, it's the turn of the President of the People's Republic of China. The pictures filmed by royal cameraman Peter Wilkinson will be watched keenly, not just in Britain, but also thousands of miles away in Beijing. It's his job to get pictures of the Queen and her guests arriving at the doorstep of Buckingham Palace. In 18 years, he has filmed over 50 state visits from some of the most powerful people in the world.
A state visit is really the ultimate in soft power diplomacy, and it is when the Queen is used in the arsenal of the United Kingdom's diplomatic armoury, if you like. It is an invitation from our head of state, the Queen, to another country's head of state, in this case, the President of the People's Republic of China.
Presidents and prime ministers are incredibly chuffed to be wined and dined in a palace in such grandeur. They're put in a horse-drawn carriage through the streets of London. They absolutely love it and dine out on it for the rest of their lives.
I never get bored. No, it's something different every day. I'm filming the Queen meeting different people every day. I'm old now, 69. When I first went to ITN, I used to pinch myself thinking, my God, I'm so lucky to work for this amazing news organisation. I don't have a GCE to my name, and I got in through really hard work, I suppose.
Well, Peter's a joy to work with. Personally, he's a great team player. He's fond of people, and I think people become fond of him, so they respond very well to him filming them, and his manner is not intrusive.
You in there?
Peter knows exactly where to stand to get the best shots, as the Queen shows the President and his wife a display of Chinese-related items from the royal collection.
Peter's reputation at ITN was always an over-large one. He was calm under pressure, who studied very carefully what he was going to do, and then executed it with great brilliance. He always had a reputation of being one of the best, and that remains today.
But if there was one incident that tested Peter's skills to breaking point, it was a tragedy which unfolded in Belfast in March 1988. On that day, his pictures would send shockwaves around the world. When two off-duty British soldiers, Corporals Derek Wood and David Howes, were murdered after accidentally stumbling upon a Republican funeral.
I just saw a car and it tried to reverse, and then taxi sort of blocked it in from behind. I can remember saying, "No, no," and someone pulled my trouser and said, "Just remember where we are." You know, I carried on filming.
There are moments in TV news when, as you see pictures coming in, the whole newsroom freezes, and that was one of them. The whole newsroom was stunned.
He called me from Belfast and said, I've witnessed something terrible.
I was in a real bad state. I just couldn't get it out of my mind, this one.
And he came back and he slept for about 3 weeks, I think. Just didn't want to wake up.
At this point, the mob caught sight of a gun.
The dilemma is whether a journalist should intervene or continue to record. In this instance, even if you were to intervene, could you help? No.
It's difficult to think of a single piece of footage that was so impactful in terms of the Northern Ireland conflict, not just in the UK, but around the world.
There's little doubt that Peter Wilkinson's footage had an impact on the Northern Ireland peace process. 25 years later, he accompanied the Queen back to a very different Belfast, capturing a once unthinkable moment as the Queen shook hands with former IRA commander Martin McGuinness.
Going back to Belfast, I mean, everybody had moved on. The royal family had moved on.
It's so nice to be back here.
So that was quite amazing to see her shake hands with Martin McGuinness.
How are you keeping? Fine, thank you very much. Nice to see you. It's very glad to be back again here.
So for the people of Northern Ireland, it was amazing, really, I thought.
Since 1998, Peter has filmed the Queen on more than 1,800 occasions in Britain and abroad.
I just love the way the robot waved at the Queen. So it did a little royal wave. At the palace, we have receptions. Some receptions have 300 people, and she shakes hands with every one of those 300. We were on the Isle of Man, and she met Sir Norman Wisdom. And he was so sort of excited by it all. He shook her hand, and he wouldn't let her go, you know, and he hung on, hang on. I could see the lady in waiting getting a little bit anxious, and I think she just started to walk over to sort of try and break the hold, and he actually let go. But it was probably a minute or so that he was hanging on to the Queen's hand for.
There's a special place in Peter's archive for footage of the Queen meeting those closest to her cameraman's heart.
This is the Queen visiting Kew Gardens. My grandchildren come along with little posies and present them to the Queen. And then just after, she looks at me and smiles and says...
But it's not just the Queen who offers the occasional on-camera aside.
I was just standing by this chap, I didn't know who he was, and the Duke came up to him.
One of yours.
He said, "What's that tie?" And he said, "Oh, it's the Guild of Television Cameramen." So he stepped back and he looked at me and he said, "Have you got one of these?"
Indeed. Yeah, are you a member of this? I am, yes. Well, I want to see you in that tie a bit more often.
Mr. Peter Wilkinson, for services to the royal household as a television cameraman.
In 18 years as cameraman to the Queen, Peter Wilkinson has changed the way television news covers the monarchy, a fact recognised in 2005 when the Queen presented him with the Royal Victorian Order.
It was a great honour. I said, "Your Majesty, I feel quite nervous today." And she just laughed and put me at ease, as she does everyone else.
Sometimes it's Peter Wilkinson's job to put the Queen at ease. One of the highlights of the year as cameraman to the Queen is recording the Queen's Christmas broadcast.
The Queen's speech is very special to work on. There are few of us in the room. Normally it's first take. Majesty's very experienced with auto cues. We don't have to work hard to make the Queen look fabulous, because she does anyway, but everybody in that room cares about her, and we make it as easy as possible.
In a remarkable working life in television, Peter Wilkinson has brought some incredible images into our homes. It's a body of work which led to him winning 3 Royal Television Society awards, including a Lifetime Achievement Award, the only cameraman ever to achieve this honour. In June 2015, the man who has documented the Queen's landmark moments reached a landmark himself. Tonight, old friends have come to celebrate his 50 years in television.
Peter doesn't like being at the centre of attention. On the other hand, he's seeing so many faces that he hasn't seen for some time, so many people who did important things with him. That must have been wonderful for him.
Peter Wilkinson is quite simply a legend. Cliché, but on this occasion this is actually true. It is, I think, almost impossible to imagine a royal occasion now without Peter. And yet he is maddeningly loyal and discreet. What a diary he could publish. But there is nothing damn him.
But there's one special guest who has sent her apologies.
Her Majesty couldn't be here tonight, but we have a special message for you from the Queen.
Okay, it says, Prince Philip and I send our warmest wishes to you.
It's quite a rare occasion that the Queen writes a personal message in that manner, and I think she feels that Peter's done a fantastic job.
Now, I too would like to pass on my gratitude for the professionalism, skill and dedication you have consistently shown as the royal cameraman.
It's a great pity Her Majesty and Prince Philip could not be here this evening. I might take them some cake or something. I've had the most incredible career, and I've seen things most people couldn't imagine. The camera was my shield, my black and white viewfinder. In fact, I wish I was holding it right now.
Gosh, he's been there on many occasions where history is being fashioned. And his pictures will be looked at in a century's time. And I can't think there's anything much better or much more worthwhile than that.
I look at a working class lad who really did go into the TV industry at the bottom of the pile, who made it all the way to the top as one of the world's great TV cameramen, and who ends up being Her Majesty's personal videographer.
I think that Peter has enabled the world to see the best of the Queen and the royal family and the engagements that they cover. He knows how to get it on the 10 o'clock news that night, and that's a great skill.
Peter stands out as somebody who is universally admired, and that's an amazing tribute. After any time in television and after 50 years, it's an astonishing tribute.
It's been fabulous. The Queen knows me now. I'm sure she trusts me. Get on very well. I love my job. It's great.
Far from falling quiet at this time of year, the countryside actually comes alive. Next on ITV, find out how it's Countrywise Winter Wonderland.